Namaskar friends, welcome to the live channel JIV and CIV Made Simple. This is our certification course in foreign exchange operation, memory based question and answer explanation session for the examination which was conducted on 14th March 2026. Friends, this time they asked one-liner question also. So that is a big relief to the student, and many aspirants have cracked the paper, right, who have gone through our study material in their very first attempt. So congratulations to all of them. And now obviously it is a very good opportunity, golden opportunity for you also to give the 28th March examination and clear in the first attempt itself. So for that very purpose I am presenting before you memory based question. You will be able to see what are the important topic from where question have appeared, so that you can prepare accordingly. So let's get started with our very first question, which is based on that under the India's foreign trade policy, that is called FTP. Right, this is a very important topic, foreign trade policy. So under the India's foreign trade policy, which of the following statement correctly describe the eligibility of goods for merchanting trade? That's called merchant trading. 4 options have been given. First one is goods that are prohibited for import into India may still be exported to other country under merchant trading. Option B, only goods that are freely importable and exportable under Indian FTP are eligible for merchant trading. Option C, as comet item can be freely traded under merchant trading without any authorization. Option D, all types of prohibited and restricted goods are allowed under merchant trading since goods do not enter India. So friends, let me explain what is the basic concept. Let's go through the basic concept first, and then you can easily answer the question. See, imagine that you are a trader, and you are a trader sitting in India, but you never actually touch the good. So you have not touched the good, right? So you buy goods from country A. This is country A, and this is you. You buy goods, right, from country A and directly ship them to country B, right? So you ship them to the country B. So this entire process, right, this entire process is what we call, merchant trading. Merchanting trade. This is called merchanting trade. So the goods never enter India. Only the documents and payment flow through India. So you are in India, right? The goods never enter India. Only the documents. You have not touched the goods. Only the documents and payment flow through the India. Now, even though goods never come into India, the rule of FTP still apply. Goods has not come, but the rule of foreign trade policy, they will apply. What does the government say? The government says that, only those goods that India normally allow for both import or for both export can be used for, merchanting trade. So India has a list of goods which it allow for import and export. So only those goods can be used for, merchanting trade. That is what government say, right? I hope it is crystal clear. So now that means if the product is prohibited in India, suppose there is some product which is prohibited in India, so you cannot trade it. You cannot trade it. Even indirectly you cannot trade it. And suppose good is restricted. Suppose goods is restricted. You need authorization. For restricted, you need authorization. So item like, Escomet, right, they require a special permission. Escomet item require a special permission. And one more thing I want to tell you, that only freely importable and freely exportable good, freely importable, freely exportable goods, only such kind of goods, they are automatically allowed. Now let's come back to the question. Now tell me which option do you think is correct? See, if you look at this particular question, option number A says that, goods that are prohibited for import in India may still be exported. No, wrong. Since the goods is prohibited, so it cannot be exported. Only goods that are freely importable, exportable under Indian FTP. Yes, I think this is the correct. Escomet item can be freely traded. No. Escomet item need authorization. All type of prohibited and restricted good are allowed. No, that's wrong. Right. So option number B is the perfect answer to this particular question. So friends, what we come to know, first of all, we talked about the merchanting trade definition. Right. I told you now that goods move from foreign seller. So we have foreign seller, and good is moving from seller to buyer. So goods never enter India. It is never entering India. That's called merchanting trade. First thing is clear. Second thing is, FTP compliance still apply. Even though goods do not come to India, but still trader in India must follow the FTP rule, foreign trade policy rule. And only freely importable and freely exportable goods are allowed, right? So the memory trick to remember this concept is, free and free rule. This is called free rule. So what does it mean? Only free import and only free export. If it is prohibited, restricted, or a SCOMED good, if India can't freely trade it, merchanting can't trade it. So remember, another good line is that no touch good, but follow Indian rule, right? So that is the point. So I hope the concept is crystal clear. So merchanting trade means goods move foreign to foreign. It does not enter India. Only freely permittable goods can be used without a special approval. And SCOMED goods need DGFT authorization. So if I ask you, whose authorization a SCOMED good need? They need DGFT authorization. Now, question number 2 on your screen. Question number 2 is a kind of case study related to, RFC account, resident foreign currency account. Let's have a look. So imagine that Mr. Raj, he has lived outside India for 15 long years. He was working abroad for 15 years. And, he has money in his NRE account. NRE account, that's called, non-resident external account. And which was tax free, yeah, right, and fully repatriable. So what does it do? So question is, which of the following statement regarding its RFC account is or are correct? So option number A, the RFC account can be maintained as a saving or fixed deposit account and may be held jointly with a resident relative on a former or survivor basis. Statement number 2, the pension received in the foreign currency from his overseas employer and maturity proceed of foreign insurance policy can be credited to the RFC account. Interest earned on the RFC account is taxable immediately upon his return to India. And if you become NRI again in the future, the RFC balance can be fully repatriated without any limit. So option they have given, you have to identify which one is correct. So 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 4, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, very good question it is. So let me explain before answering the question, let me introduce you to our foreign exchange operation comprehensive course. In this course, I provide you, there is a separate folder for theory plus MCQ plus case studies PDF along with RBI recent circular and unit wise theory video explanation. In the theory video explanation folder, you get videos and previous year question and answer compilation. In the videos folder, it has been divided into 5 modules, and inside each module you will get unit wise content which is similar to as prescribed by the IIBF in their syllabus for the CCFE examination. Not only that, in the theory and MCQ folder, you get unit wise theory, unit wise MCQ, previous year question paper, memory based question just now we are discussing, and along with that you get module wise quick revision PDF which help you revise the entire content in a very short time. So this is a complete package for your foreign exchange operation course. You can check out the link in the description section for more detail. Now friends, let's come back to the question. So now what is happening here? You can imagine that Mr. Raj is there, right? He has lived outside India and for 15 long years, right? Mr. Raj, he has lived outside India for 15 years, right? Now he returned to India permanently, and what he has done, he has money in his NRE account. He has money in the NRE account, right, which was tax free. So this money was tax free, you know it very well, and this was fully repatriable. Right, this money was fully repatriable. When he was NRE account, that is fully repatriable. Right, when he was NRI. And once now Raj become resident, that NRE account cannot continue, right? So what should he do? So what he need to do? He need to convert this NRE account to the RFC account, resident foreign currency account. So you can think of this RFC account as a safe locker. You can think of it like a safe locker in foreign currency because the name itself suggests foreign currency. So obviously the denomination of the currency is obviously foreign currency, right? So it allows them to keep their overseas earning in dollar. Yes. So this RFC account allow Raj to keep their foreign earning in dollar, GBP, right, euro, GBP, etc. Right, even after returning to India. So now let's look at each and every statement. Statement number 1 says that RFC account can be opened as a saving account. Yes, correct. It can be opened as a fixed deposit. Correct. And they can be held jointly with a resident relative. This is also correct, but only on a formal survival basis. Correct. So it means that Mr. Raj, formal survival basis is what? Mr. Raj will control it. Control lie in the hand of Mr. Raj, right? And the relative is only a kind of backup. So yes, statement 1 is perfectly correct. Now statement number 2. So what can be deposited in RFC account? That is what this question is all about. So let me tell you, inside RFC account, you can deposit the following. First of all, you can deposit the pension. Second thing you can deposit is superannuation. Superannuation received from overseas employer. Third thing you can deposit is maturity money. And the fourth thing is any foreign asset bought back legally. right? So if you look at the statement that they have provided, yes, pension, maturity proceed, yes, correct. 2 is also correct, right? What about statement number 3? So statement number 3 says interest earned on RFC account is taxable immediately. See, when Mr. Raj returned, he is treated like an RNOR. You know what RNOR? Question may be asked. That is when he returned to India, how he is treated like? He is treated like RNOR, resident but not ordinary resident. Up to 2 year, up to 2 year period, he will be treated like RNOR. In this period, you know what happened? Whatever interest is accumulated on this RFC account, suppose he has his FD, so obviously interest he will accumulate. So whatever interest, you know, it is fully tax free. Interest is tax free for 2 year, right? And tax apply only after the 2 year is passed, only after the RNOR period is passed. So think about it. So till RNOR period, no tax, and after RNOR period, fully tax. So if you look at the statement number 3, it says that, you know, interest is taxable immediately. No, this is not taxable immediately, because for 2 year it will not be taxable, because he is held in the category of RNOR. Now friends, if you look at the statement number 4, so it says that if you become NRI in the future, RFC balance can be fully repatriated. So yes, RFC balance is fully and freely repatriable. If Mr. Raj become NRI again, he can transfer the entire RFC balance abroad without any limit. So we are observing that 4 number option, 2 number option, 1 number option, all these 3 are correct. So the correct answer to this question is 1, 3 and 4. Sorry, 1, 2 and 4. Yes, option number B is correct. So RFC, you can remember it. There's a memory trick using which you can remember RFC, like, you know, return foreign control, right? Return is means, you know, which is for returning NRI. Foreign means, you know, they hold foreign currency freely. Foreign currency they can hold freely. And C means control. Control means full control, right? Full control plus full repatriation, right? So RFC interest is free until RNOR. So remember, what we learned from this discussion is that, you know, RFC, that is, you know, resident foreign currency, is for returning NRI to keep money in the foreign currency. It can be saving account, it can be FD, joint holding allowed only as a farmer or survivor. And for foreign pension, insurance money amount can be credited. Interest is tax free, just now we have discussed. And RFC fund are fully repatriable anytime. Now the next question we have regarding the ECB, external commercial borrowing. Let's have a look. So very good question it is. So it is asking that Indian corporate intends to avail ECB specifically for the repayment of the existing rupee loan, right? According to the RBI master direction on ECB, what is the MAMP required for such a transaction? Minimum average maturity period 3, 5, 7, 10. So let me illustrate it using some example. So suppose an Indian company has taken a rupee loan from Indian bank. Suppose this is the Indian bank, right? And this is the company. What they have done, they have taken rupee loan, right? Now to build a plant, install machine, or to carry out major capital expenditure. Now the company want to bring in money from abroad. This particular company, they want to bring in money from abroad to repay that loan. So they want to repay that loan, and the company want to bring money from abroad to repay that. The main purpose of bringing money is to repay the loan. So what RBI say? RBI has a very clear rule here, that if you want to use ECB money to repay a rupee loan taken for capex, so capex capital expenditure, like, you know, building a machinery, building a factory, or something like that. So what RBI say, if you are using the foreign currency loan, if you are using the ECB to pay out the rupee loan, right? So it create risk of sudden foreign exchange outflow. Yes, it create risk of, you know, exchange outflow. So RBI forces company to keep the foreign loan for a longer time. So if you want to use ECB money to repay a rupee loan taken for capital expenditure, then ECB. So what RBI says, that this ECB should be for the longer maturity. RBI says that if you want to use the ECB for repayment of Indian loan, this ECB should be of longer maturity. Specifically, the MAMP of such ECB should be 7 years. Now something might arise in your mind. Some question might hit your mind. Why so? Because if the company borrow from abroad only to repay domestic loan immediately, it creates risk of sudden foreign exchange outflow. Sudden forex outflow, right? So RBI forces company to keep the foreign loan for a longer time, right? So remember, the correct answer is 7 years. If it is general ECB maturity, that is 3 year, normal business purpose. If it is for repayment of rupee loan for capex, it is 7 year. This is exactly the case in the question. If it is for repayment of rupee loan for non-capex purpose, then it is 10 year. So see, capex purpose they have given 7 year timeline. For non-capex purpose they are given 10 year timeline. Like working capital is a non-capex, like general corporate debt. So therefore the required MAMP in this particular case is 7 year. C number is correct. So you can remember it like this. Let me give you a memory trick to remember it. You can remember it like this: CAPEX 7 years, right? Or you can remember it 7x, right? 7x, fine. And what about non-capex? If it is non-capex, then it is 10 years. So 10 long zero, right? 10 non-long zero. So ECB means foreign loan taken by Indian entity. Normal ECB maturity is 3 year. For rupee loan repayment, ECB maturity is 7 year. And for rupee loan repayment for non-capex purpose, then you know it is 10 year. So RBI imposed longer maturity to prevent quick in and out foreign forex money. That is the main reason why RBI has done so. Now let's look at the question number 4 of today's session. So this particular table clearly summarizes all of these things. You can go through it in our PDF course. Now let's have a look at one question on ODI is asked most frequently. So what the question is all about, you know, the question is talking about ABC Limited. What they have done? So they are Indian company. They propose to make overseas direct investment in it WOS, fully owned subsidiary, right, under the automatic route. So you know there are two kind of route: automatic route as well as, you know, so approval route. So this Indian company they want to make overseas direct investment in their WOS through the automatic route. This is the key point to highlight. WOS, this is the key point to highlight. What they want to do, overseas direct investment. So as per the current RBI regulation, what is the maximum permissible financial commitment that ABC Limited can make without prior approval of RBI? Very good question. So 100% of your net worth, 200% of your net worth, 400% of your net worth, no limit. So let me illustrate it using example so that it becomes crystal clear to you. Let's imagine that ABC Limited, they basically this is an Indian company, right? They want to set up or they want to invest in a WOS, fully owned subsidiary outside India. They want to invest, this company want to invest in its fully owned subsidiary outside India. Let's say they want to invest in Singapore. They want to invest in Singapore, or they want to invest in Dubai, right? Or they want to invest in US. So this type of foreign investment is what we call ODI. So this Indian company, they want to invest in WOS outside India. That's called ODI. Now the key question is, how much can ABC Limited invest abroad without RBI approval? So under the current overseas investment rule and regulation of RBI, Indian allow company to be pretty generous limit. So they can invest up to 400% of their net worth on, you know, automatic route. And this is quite high because RBI want Indian company to expand globally, but still within the safe limit. So this 400% is not equity. Remember, it includes, you know, it includes loan debt also. It includes guarantee also. It includes other form of financial support. All kinds of things are included in the 400% of net worth, right? So the correct answer to this question is option number, yes, C. C is the correct answer, right? So Indian company can invest abroad without RBI approval. So the key point is they need not take RBI approval. That is the meaning of automatic route. Had they have to take, had they been taken, you know, permission of RBI, then that would not be called automatic route. That will be called approval route. And financial commitment, what are the things included in the financial commitment? Suppose financial commitment means many things. That may include, you know, equity share. That may include preference share. That may include debenture, etc., etc. And now this limit is based on latest audited balance sheet. As you can see, they have mentioned everywhere latest audited balance sheet, right? So you can remember it like this. Let me give you a trick to remember this question. So option number, yeah. So you can think of ODI is equal to 4D is equal to 4 times net worth, right? ODI 4D 400 limit. So go global up to 4 times. So ODI is an Indian company investing in foreign subsidiary and joint venture. Limit is 400% based on the latest audited balance sheet. Limit cover total financial commitment including equity, preference share, debenture, everything are included. Even for WOS, the 400% cap apply. Now let's look at the next question that we have. Very interesting question we are going to discuss right now. If you think that this video is adding value to your preparation, please hit the like button. Now have a look at the next question that we have. So basically this question is asking that in the case of export procedure under Indian custom regulation, which authority grant the final permission for goods to be loaded onto the vessel or aircraft, thereby completing the custom clearance process? Four options they have provided: the Reserve Bank of India by issuing EBRC, the shipping line by issuing bill of lading, the proper officer of custom by issuing the late export order, and the last option they have provided, the port authority by issuing port clearance certificate. Very good question. So friends, let me explain in the very simple manner so that you can comprehend it very easily. Friends, whenever goods are exported from India, so this is India, right? And goods are being exported. So they cannot just be taken to the port and loaded onto a ship or craft. No, not like that. There is a strict process under Indian custom. So there is a process that has to be followed. And the final and the most crucial step is getting permission to load the good. This is the most crucial step. Permission to load good. Right. Now the question is, who gives the permission to load the good? Yes, it is not the bank. It is not the shipping line. It is not the port authority. It is the custom officer. Question may ask that who gives the permission, right? Who gives the permission to load? So it is not, it is the custom officer. Custom officer gave the permission, right? It's also called proper office of custom. So this officer check the shipping bill, verify document, examine goods if required, ensure duties or compliance are completed, and then issue the late export order. So we are talking about custom officer. What he is doing? He is checking the shipping bill, he verify the document, and then he examine goods, right, and ensure duties or compliance are completed, and then issue the late export order, right, or commonly called LEO. So the moment LEO is issued, custom clearance is completed, right? The moment LEO is issued, what happened? Custom clearance get completed and export is allowed, and goods can now be loaded onto the ship. LEO is late export order has to be issued. So LEO is a final approval from the custom stating that goods are allowed to leave India. And who issue it? The proper office of custom, not port, not shipping line, not RBI, right? And it is issued after the shipping bill verification, duty assessment, examination of cargo, and regulatory compliance. So if you look at the option that they have provided, that question was who issue, which authority grant the permission? So it is the proper office of custom. Yes, C number is correct, right? So LEO, without LEO, goods cannot be loaded onto the vessel or aircraft. Please note it down. Late export order, that is what we call. So so you can remember this LEO like this: late export out. Late export out. So LEO means let the good export out. This is the trick to remember. This is not an actual full form. So and only custom can give this permission. So what we learned from this discussion is that the final authority for export clearance is the proper officer of custom, and final order and documents is called LEO, late export order. LEO significance is give permission to load goods for export, and without LEO, goods cannot leave India. So these are the key things to remember here. Now friends, let's switch our focus to the next question that we have. So I think this is the question number 6 of today's session. So what this question is all about, that importer has a fully utilized the quantity value permitted under an valid import license issued under the FTP. So again, the topic is FTP. So now you can easily appreciate the importance of this chapter FTP, which is I think the last chapter. So you must make sure that you have a full understanding of this chapter, of all the concepts, and we have covered it in comprehensive way in our video course. So now the question is, importer has the fully utilized the quantity or value permitted under an import license. Now what happened, after the completion of the licensed import, to whom should this import license be surrendered? Very good question. Option they have provided: AD Bank, through which the payment was made, the jurisdiction custom authority, the licensing authority, and the Reserve Bank of India. So to whom the import license must be surrendered? That's the question. So let me explain it using an example so that it becomes crystal clear to you. Imagine that you receive a permission slip from the government. So this is the government and this is the you. So you are receive what slip? Permission slip from the government, right? That tells you how much you can allow to import. So this slip tell you how much you are allowed to, you know, how much you are allowed to import, right? So this permission slip is called, import license. So imagine that government give you a permission slip and it tells you how much you are allowed to import, and this slip is called, this slip is called import license. And who issued it? It is issued by DGFT, Directorate General of Foreign Trade. So this is the DGFT who issued it. So DGFT has several offices across India, and these offices are called, regional authority. Several offices across India, these are called regional authority, and that is where the license come from. Now once you have used that license completely, it means you have imported everything you were allowed, so you must return this license. So DGFT has several offices called regional authority. So once you have used the license completely, you have imported everything you were allowed, you must return the license. So the simple logic is that the place that issue the license is the same place where you must return it, right? So let's look at the option. Option number A says that, AD Bank. So you have to surrender to AD Bank. No. AD Bank only check whether the payment for import is done properly using FEMA rule or not, right? They do not issue license and therefore do not take them back. So one who issue license, he must take them back, and AD has nothing to do with that. What is the role of AD? AD check whether the payment for import is done. Option number A, right, is the AD Bank. So what do you think? AD Bank only check whether the payment for import is done properly or not, right? So AD Bank only check for the payment, right? Let me write it down. They only check for the payment, right? They do not issue license and therefore do not take them back. What about the jurisdiction custom authority? So remember, custom officer only check your license at the time of import, right? They check license at the time of import, right? So to see if the goods you are importing matches what is allowed, but they are not responsible for taking the license back. So B is also wrong. What about C? If you look at the C, that is the DGFT regional authority. Yes, this is the only correct option because the license begin and end at the DGFT, correct. And what about D? RBI. See, RBI control foreign exchange rule but has no role in receiving or collecting the import license. So option number D is also wrong. The correct answer is C only. So remember, issued by DGFT, returned to DGFT, or even simpler, who give the license, give it back to them. So this one line will never let you forget the rule, right? So the question was to whom it should be surrendered. It should be surrendered to DGFT. So what we learned from this discussion is that, that import license are issued by DGFT, first point, Directorate General of Foreign Trade, through its RA, regional authority, and after the full use of expiry, the license must be surrendered to the same DGFT. Custom only verify license at the port, AD Bank deals with the payment, and RBI has zero involvement. So this is the key concept summary as you can go through it. Now let's have a look at one another question. This is regarding the DDA account, very important. That's called diamond dollar account. So what is happening here? An Indian exporter open a DDA account with an authorized dealer bank. Which of the following benefits are available under the DDA scheme? So they are asking about the key benefits available, right? Option they have given that exporter can retain export proceed in foreign currency without immediate conversion into INR. Fund in DDA can be freely used for making import payment and other permitted current account transaction. There is no requirement to repatriate export proceed to India when credited to the DDA. The exporter can reduce exchange risk by matching foreign currency receivable with payable. Option they have given 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 4, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Very good question it is. So friends, what do you think? Let's understand this is the simplest possible way regarding the DDA scheme. So this is called diamond dollar account. It is like a foreign currency account, especially allow for business in the diamond, business in the gem and jewelry sector. So these sectors are eligible for this diamond dollar account. It helps avoid frequent currency conversion and manage foreign currency more efficiently. So if you go through the statement number 1 says that exporter can retain export proceed in foreign currency. Yes, that is the correct one. When an exporter receives dollar from an overseas buyer, normally it must be converted into INR. So what I mean to say that suppose this is an exporter, what they have received? They have received dollar from where? From an overseas buyer. So they must be converted into INR, right? But under DDA, the exporter can keep it in the foreign currency. So what happened in the DDA scheme? They can keep it in the foreign currency. This help avoid conversion every time. Now, statement number 2, that fund can be used for import payment and permitted current account expense. Absolutely right. Exporter often import rough diamond, right? What exporter do? They often import rough diamond. So instead of converting dollar to rupee and back to dollar again, they directly pay in foreign currency from the DDA. This save time, charges and paperwork. So no need to convert this dollar into rupee and then to dollar, right? So it save time, it save charges, it save paperwork. Yes, correct. So 1 and 2 are absolutely correct. If you look at the option number 3, statement number 3, what does it say? It says that no requirement to repatriate export proceed to India. So this is the false statement. Even if money is credited to the DDA, exporter must still bring the money to India within the FEMA time limit. What I mean to say, that money is credited to DDA. Money is credited to the DDA account. Exporter must still bring the money to India within the FEMA limit, right? So DDA is not an exemption from the repatriation rule. And what about statement number 4? This is incorrect. And what about statement number 4? It says that exporter can reduce exchange risk by matching foreign currency receivable with payable. So exchange risk can be reduced. This is the correct one. When both inflow means what? Export. And when both outflow means what? Import, are in the same foreign currency. We inflow and outflow, we are talking in respect of the funds. So when you do export, funds comes in. When you do import, funds goes out. So when the inflow and outflow are in the same foreign currency, the exporter avoid fluctuation loss, and that is called natural hedging. Yes, so 4 is correct. So the final answer, we have seen that only 3 is incorrect and 1, 2 and 4 are correct. So the correct answer is option number B. Okay, so DDM is dollar in, dollar out. That's it, right? See, you can, easy memory trick I can give you to remember the DDA concept. You can think of it like dollar in, right, and dollar out. That's it. Keep dollar, yes. Pay dollar, yes. Avoid exchange loss, yes. Skip repatriation, no. Repatriation cannot be skipped, right? So DDA allow exporter to retain foreign currency without immediate conversion. This is the first point to keep in the mind. And money in DDA can be used for import and permitted expense, but repatriation rule still apply under FEMA. No exemptions for that, right? It help in natural hedging. Yes, the biggest advantage of having DDA account is the natural hedging purpose, right? So friends, we have some more question available. If you want me to explain that, just write yes in the comment box, and that will be available in our paid course. In our course, we will provide you explanation of all the questions that we have collected from